Anakin stood on the high balcony of the Senate Rotunda, with the wind tugging at his cloak like an impatient hand. Beneath him, Coruscant glittered in perfect lines and polished curves, a planet turned into a promise. The crowd was a living tide, faces upturned, throats raw from chanting his name. Chosen protector, hero of the new order. The words hit him like blaster fire that never left a scar. He raised his hand because the Emperor stood beside him, and because the holocams demanded it, and because the Empire loved a symbol, the way hunger loved meat. The roar rolled over him, and all Anakin heard was the temple burning. Not flames, not screams. The silence after, when the last door slid shut, and the Force went thin and empty, like a lung that refused to fill. Palpatine's smile was gentle, almost proud. It was always the same smile now, as if war had made the galaxy a child again, and only he knew how to tuck it in. Your presence calms them, the Emperor murmured, voice warm enough to pretend it cared. They feel safe. Anakin stared at the endless city, at speeders slicing between towers like needles in cloth, at banners draped in red, at stormtrooper helmets reflecting the lights. Safe. He tasted the lie like metal. When the rally finally ended and the applause faded into distant echoes, Palpatine led him into shadowed corridors where the marble turned cold and the air smelled faintly of old power. There is trouble, Palpatine said, and the softness left his voice the way sunlight leaves a room at dusk. In the Outer Rim. Terrorists. Fanatics clinging to the chaos of the past. Anakin didn't answer. He felt the word terrorists slide into place, neatly covering something uglier. Jedi. Survivors. People who wouldn't bow. Palpatine placed a hand on his shoulder. The touch was light, but it carried weight, like a chain that pretended to be comfort. You have done so much, the Emperor said. Finish the war so there will be peace. This is mercy, my friend. Put an end to their suffering. Put an end to ours. Anakin nodded because that was what the hero did. Because the general obeyed. Because the man he used to be had burned away somewhere on black sand and red rivers, even if his skin had not. Later, alone in his quarters, he tried to sleep. Nightmares came anyway. He saw young faces in the temple halls, eyes wide, trusting, and he saw his own lightsaber cutting through that trust. He heard Obi-Wan's voice on Mustafar, cracking with grief. He felt Padme's hand slipping from his, not in hatred, but in terror. He woke with his breath ragged and his fists clenched, the sheets twisted like restraints. In the thin hours before dawn, he reached out with the Force the way a drowning man reached for air. He expected the familiar press of anger, the sharp clarity of dominance. Instead, he felt something else. A pocket of calm. Old, quiet, patient, untouched by the dark side's fever. It wasn't in Coruscant. It was far, far enough that even his senses had to stretch, far enough that the signal trembled like a distant star. It felt like a place that still remembered what the Force was supposed to be. The next day, his Star Destroyer cut through hyperspace like a blade. The Imperial briefing called the planet rugged, insignificant, full of primitive settlements and insurgent sympathizers. A perfect hiding place for relics. Anakin stood on the bridge as the world grew in the viewport. Jagged mountains, deep forests, rivers like veins. His troops were confident. Stormtroopers marched in clean rows. Walkers loomed like moving fortresses. Arrogance, he realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet certainty. The first strike came in the narrow pass between cliffs. Blaster fire poured from above, not wild, but measured, disciplined. Smoke canisters rolled down like gray fruit, the air filled with choking fog. Troopers fired blindly. Officers shouted over one another. Walkers tried to pivot, too slow in the tight terrain. And then the force moved. Not as a hammer, as a current. Anakin felt it in the timing of the attack, the way traps were sprung exactly when his units committed, the way a falling boulder didn't crush indiscriminately, but forced them into a kill zone. It was as if the land itself had learned to fight. He leapt from his command speeder into the fog, lightsaber igniting with that familiar snap hiss. Blue light cut through gray. For a moment he was what the Emperor wanted him to be, an unstoppable answer. But every time his blade met an attacker, the attacker didn't press. They retreated. They redirected. They refused to meet fury with fury. He chased one shadow through the smoke, anger rising because the chase felt like mockery. The figure turned, cloak whipping, and lifted a hand. Anakin's saber arm froze, not from fear, but from a pressure that wasn't crushing. It was restraining, like a teacher steadying a student's wrist. Another figure stepped into view, older, bearded, hood down. Obi-Wan Kenobi. The world narrowed. The fog became irrelevant. The battle sounds faded to a distant drum. Anakin's throat tightened, not with rage this time, but with something more poisonous. Memory. Obi-Wan's eyes were tired, but they were steady. He didn't ignite a saber. He simply looked at Anakin as if he were still a person. "If you were truly gone," Obi-Wan said, voice carrying through chaos with impossible calm, "you'd already be dead." Anakin tried to move, to strike, to prove he was what he had become. Obi-Wan's hand twitched, and Anakin's lightsaber flew from his grip, spinning into the fog like a fallen star. The rebels closed in, weapons aimed, breaths visible in the cold air. "Take him alive!" Obi-Wan ordered. A trooper screamed nearby. A blaster bolt sizzled against rock. The war kept happening around them. Anakin stared at Obi-Wan. "You think you can save me?" Obi-Wan's expression didn't change. "No, I think you can." They bound his wrists, not with cruelty, but with practicality. They took him through hidden trails and narrow ravines, deeper into the planet's bones, until the Empire's machines were far behind, and only the wind and the quiet remained. The sanctuary wasn't a temple. There were no gleaming spires, no grand halls. It was a community tucked between trees and stone, modest homes built into the hillside, gardens terraced in the sun, a small training yard marked by worn posts and smooth, swept earth. Jedi lived there, yes, but not as generals, not as legends, as people. Anakin expected hatred. He expected fear. He expected the satisfying simplicity of being a monster in someone else's eyes. Instead, they watched him. A refugee healer checked the bruises on his wrists with the same care she might have given a stranger. A youngling walked past, paused, and stared with open curiosity instead of terror, until an older guardian gently guided the child away without a word. It made Anakin's skin crawl. In the days that followed, he was a prisoner in the simplest way. He could not leave, and everyone knew he could kill them all if he chose. They acted as if that choice belonged to him. They gave him food, water, a place to sleep, and silence. He hated the silence most. He could endure pain. He could endure screams. He could endure the Emperor's honeyed praise. Silence forced him to hear himself. He watched their training, sparring matches that ended when a student lost balance, not when they were humiliated. Exercises where the goal was to protect a partner's blind side instead of striking an opening. Hours of meditation where the younglings sat cross-legged and restless until slowly they became still. He watched the elders repair roofs, mend tools, harvest crops. Discipline without conquest. Strength without dominance. Anakin tried to laugh at it, tried to sneer, but the Force in this place, it felt clean. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised purple, he was brought to a small room where a battered holoprojector sat on a low table. Obi-Wan was there, alone. "I found this," Obi-Wan said quietly. "It never reached you." He activated the device. Padme's image shimmered into being, soft and flickering, wearing a simple robe, her hair loose, her eyes tired. She looked older than Anakin remembered, not from years, but from carrying too much hope. "Anakin," the recording said, voice gentle, careful, as if speaking too loudly might break something. "If you ever see this, it means you're somewhere I can't reach." Anakin's chest tightened. He tried to look away. He couldn't. "I know you're afraid," Padme continued. "You think fear makes you strong. You think taking control will stop the loss." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She held herself together the way she always did, steady hand on the edge of chaos. "Choose the man you are when you're afraid," she whispered. "Not the man fear turns you into." The recording ended. The room stayed quiet. Anakin sat motionless, the projector's blue light fading from his face. He didn't break into tears. He didn't shout. He simply felt something inside him crack. Not into pieces, but open. Obi-Wan didn't touch him, didn't offer comfort. He only asked softly, "Who are you?" when no one is applauding. Anakin's mouth opened. No answer came. Weeks passed. They made him train, not with a lightsaber at first, with a practice staff, with footwork, with breathing, with balance, with patience that felt like torture. He lost sparring matches and hated himself for it. He tried to win with speed and aggression, and the defenders simply stepped aside, redirected his momentum, put him on the ground. Again. Again. Eventually, exhausted and furious, he stopped trying to crush them and started trying not to fall. And in that shift, small, humiliating, quiet, something changed. Strength, he learned, could mean restraint. Then the Empire found them. It began with a distant rumble of engines and the tremor in the Force, like a bruise forming under skin. Scouts returned breathless. Smoke rose on the horizon. Anakin stood at the edge of the village, watching the line of black dots grow into walkers, gunships, purge units moving with mechanical certainty. The Imperial commander arrived with a thin smile and cold eyes, a man shaped by order and rewarded for cruelty. He looked at the sanctuary as if it were wrought to be cut away. "Relics," he said over loudspeakers. "Surrender your fugitives, and you may be spared." Anakin felt the old instincts rise. Escape. Return. Take his place beside the Emperor. Be the blade again. He looked at the village, at the younglings being hurried into hidden paths, at the elders taking positions not with panic, but with grim acceptance, at the person who had lost family to Order 66, staring at him with cold civility that never softened. He hesitated. A single heartbeat of indecision, and in that heartbeat, a blast struck a home near the outer ridge. Fire blossomed. Someone screamed. The sanctuary moved into action, evacuating, defending, not with fury but with precision. Traps snapped, trees fell, smoke and shadow swallowed the first wave. Anakin stood frozen, disgusted with himself. Obi-Wan appeared beside him, face soot-streaked, eyes hard, not angry, not pleading, only truthful. Now you know the price of inaction, Obi-Wan said. Anakin swallowed. His voice came out rough. What do you want from me? Obi-Wan looked toward the fleeing civilians. Protection. Something in Anakin settled. Not peace. Not forgiveness. Decision. He stepped forward. Get them out, he said. I'll hold. Obi-Wan studied him for a beat, as if searching for the lie. Then he nodded once and vanished back into the chaos. The final stand wasn't glorious. It was mud and smoke and blaster scorch on stone. It was bodies moving with purpose, each motion chosen, each strike meant to create space for someone else to live. Anakin fought in the center of it, but not like before. No roaring charges, no reckless lunges. He moved like a shield. He intercepted fire meant for a fleeing child. He disarmed without killing when he could. He took hits meant for others and kept his feet. The commander saw him and laughed, voice amplified and sharp. There he is. The Emperor's chosen monster. Show them what you are. Anakin felt rage claw at him. The easy power was right there, ready to flood his veins, ready to make the world simple again. He didn't take it. He breathed. He remembered Padme's plea, Obi-Wan's steady eyes, the quiet discipline of people who had every reason to hate him and chose not to become hate. An Inquisitor stepped from the smoke, lightsaber igniting, moving toward the evacuee's path like a predator scenting blood. Anakin could end it with fury. Instead, he met the Inquisitor with calm. Their blades clashed, blue against red, light against hungry shadow. The dark side pressed, whispering promises. Anakin let the whispers pass through him like wind through leaves. He struck once, clean, decisive, not to punish, but to stop. The Inquisitor fell. Anakin staggered, pain blooming in his side where a hidden blade had caught him, deep and hot. Not the spectacular suffering of lava and flame, just real, human injury. He dropped to one knee. Around him, the sanctuary's defenders fell back, retreating in ordered steps as the last civilians vanished into the forest. The commander shouted orders, furious now, because victory was taking too long, because the relics would live to become a story. Obi-Wan appeared again, cornered by a purge unit's heavy fire. For an instant, Anakin saw Mustafar in the angle of Obi-Wan's shoulders, the doomed line of the moment. Anakin rose through pain and moved between Obi-Wan and death. He took the blaster bolts on his saber, redirected them into the dirt, then drove forward, forcing the purge unit back long enough for Obi-Wan to escape. Obi-Wan stared at him breathless, eyes wide with something that wasn't surprise anymore. I never stopped believing you could come back, Obi-Wan said, voice breaking around the words. Anakin's jaw clenched. Don't! he rasped. "Don't make this easy." Obi-Wan's gaze didn't flinch. "I'm not." The defenders withdrew into the trees, leaving behind smoke and shattered stone and the ruins of a sanctuary that had been more home than Anakin deserved. The Empire took the ground, but not the people. Days later, far from the battle, Anakin lay on a simple cot in a quiet refuge, bandaged, feverish, alive. There were no banners, no applause, no holocams. Just a small memorial wall outside, names carved into wood and stone. Younglings, Jedi, locals. Lost lives that didn't care about politics or propaganda. Anakin forced himself to his feet and knelt before it, the way he once knelt for a chancellor who had called himself Savior. This kneeling was different. It was not obedience. It was truth. Obi-Wan approached, steps soft. "What will you do now?" Anakin stared at the carved names until his vision blurred and sharpened again. "I don't know," he said, voice quiet, honest in a way it had not been for years. He touched the ground with trembling fingers, feeling the world steady beneath him. "But, for the first time, I'm not afraid of that." Far away on Coruscant, the Emperor would hear rumors he could not kill without admitting they were real. Whispers of the Empire's hero turning his blade against its cruelty, of a general choosing protection over possession, of a legend cracking from the inside. Palpatine would smile, icy and patient, and tighten his grip on the galaxy. But he would no longer have his tightest leash, and Anakin Skywalker, unscarred in flesh but scarred in soul, would begin the slow, painful work of earning the light one choice at a time.